know you guys have seen it yet, but BrianWilton.com is looking really good. And the Patreon site, I'm doing a series on the runes. I'm releasing all the early stuff for the books. And what else was I doing? Oh, something for the family. The interviews are going to be on there. Yeah, it's going to be big. Hell, it is big. I've been working my ass off on it. Let's see here. Let's see if I can record this too. Come on, Joe. Jason, good to see you, bud. How's things out in Colorado?
Hello.
You have no sound, Jason. No sound whatsoever. Okay, well, anyway, this is thanks everybody for joining me again on Sunday night. If you have not checked out my website, BrianWilton.com, I highly encourage you to do so. It is rapidly shaping up to be the place to go. There's a Patreon site that I've got attached to it where I'm doing a series on the runes, where I'm releasing the pre-releases for the books. The one, The Courage to Love, that I've been working on, and another one that I'm working on for Also True for the Family. You know, how to incorporate the children into this household faith, because that's what it was. You know, many years ago, our ancestors, every father had the right to approach the divine in his own home, and the children were a part of that. It's becoming rapidly apparent that if we can't provide our children with, in today's world especially, we can't provide them a place where they might go with the same kind of concerns of growing up, of a broken heart, of first loves, of failing the course, of not making the team. If they can't approach these gods in the same way we do, we're really missing the boat about it all. So this is going to be kind of an important work for me. And like I say, the notes about it, the pre-release stuff, it's all going to be on my Patreon site. It's in the rune series. I've done 2 of them. I'm going to do Thurisaz tonight after I get done, and probably Anzu's as well. It'll be a little bit different than everybody else's. You can rest assured of that. Tonight, I want to talk about how a man should be known. It spells it out real clear in the Skald Skarpamal. Yes, that's it. Anyway, it's the book for the Skalds. How to be a Skald, how to write Skaldic text, how to paraphrase. We'll start with the gods. Now, Odin's is pretty in depth because he is the All-Father. And I hear the universalists sometimes say, well, he's the All-Father, not the Some-Father. Well, I think Zeus and Quetzalcoatl and some of these other chief deities might have something to say about that. But as it stands, he is known in our faith among our tribes as the All-Father. Now, it goes in a big, long list, right? And it goes through each of these famous skalds. And each of these famous skalds had a place and time of a different village, of a different community, of a different tribe. And he has I think what I've heard, 168 different references to him. Here he's called, Havardr the Halt called him the Hanged God. Viga Glum also called him the Hanged God. Refir called him the Gracious One, the Holy Cup of the Raven God. Eyvindir Skald Despoiler called him the Cargo God. Then Glumir Garrison called him the Tear of Triumph. Himself inspired the terror of ships, the god of breezes that favor good men steered them. That's a pretty good deal. Then Eyvindir called him Gautatir, Ulfur Ugason, the far-famed rideth, swiftly the far-famed rideth, foretelling God to the fire speeds, to the widest pyre of his offering. Through my cheeks praise songs are pouring. That's a real interesting thing because it really puts him up on a pedestal, the far-famed one, the foretelling God.
Brian, can
He says
you
praise
mute
songs
Jason?
are pouring. When we do a bloat, usually we call upon the God and we call out a few kennings and who he is and what he does. But this right here says, through my cheeks, praise songs are pouring. I wonder what our spirituality would become if we were to practice that. And I know it sounds cheesy, but if we were to practice that attitude of gratitude with regards to our deities. As you know, you can look across the spectrum of heathenry, and also true. And there's some fairly important individuals that don't believe we can cultivate a spirituality out of this. They don't believe that the deities are any more real than anything else. But what's it cost us to buy into that? What's it cost me to say thank you? What's it cost me to offer praise songs throughout my day when things are going good, when things are going bad, when things are just going? What's it cost me to keep these gods at the forefront of my thought process? Because that's the real trick with all of this. How might the depth of my spirituality change if I were to cultivate that very important thought process of having them right up front? And here's an ancient reference to the fact that that's how it was done long ago. They spoke highly of these gods. They talked about them. They weren't making jokes. They weren't using them to justify arguments. They weren't using these words to do anything other than offer praise. These were divine beings to them. We have kind of a little ways to go with regards to that amongst some people. And I spoke about it a couple of weeks ago when we get distracted by the seven anlaces being juggled as soon as we walk in the door, and we never get to the part where we might bring some more depth and spirituality to our faith. And those words are such harsh words to use in today's world. They either lend themselves to imagery of Christians and their ilk and cross watchers, or it lends itself to the idea of these New Age individuals and hippies, and well, I'll worship that God, then I'll worship this God, and I'll just kind of put them all together for my own personal pantheon because I've got this connection here and this connection here. See, it requires discipline to stick to a pantheon of gods and live up to that standard. If you're making it up as you go, willy-nilly, you got to ask yourself, what kind of results should you be expecting? And that's something we need to think about as well. And then I really don't care if somebody wants to go over and worship the Egyptian gods or my gods or the Greek gods. I really don't care how they do it. My primary concern is that the benefits of them doing it leads them to be a better individual. My primary concern with them doing that is that they find positive purpose, balance, and direction. My primary concern with that is not whether or not I'm more right than they are, but that they might live a good life, because that's what it takes to change the world. I want to sit there and make fun of them for worshiping this God or some other thing, and kind of get up on my high horse because I've got an adjective in front of my also true. I'm distracted by the seven juggling anlaces.
Oh,
We can't really afford that anymore. People
okay.
can do whatever they want. Doesn't bother me a bit. Go do
Baby.
it. That doesn't mean that they're going to get invited to my table all the time. Some of them will, some of them won't. But we have to begin to look at that. Why are we doing that? Am I offering praise to these gods that are such an important, and they have literally changed the lives of many of the people that I've worked with? Or am I spending my time with the songs pouring from my cheek, justifying how important I am? It's a real important question and a real strong distinction we've got to begin to cultivate. But we don't got to. We can limp along just like this for as long as we want to. Or we can really begin to embrace something that has changed the lives of millions of people. Right now, lives are being changed. And that's a stunning statement to say, but think about how many people you know who have done the right about face and turned their lives around, that have a code now that they live by, and from their cheeks, songs of praise are showing up in the tales of great deeds of getting up one more time in the ability to try yet again. That's what we're going to talk about tonight, how we should be known. As I continue, Hallfrieder calls him the wife of Thridi. And here's an example of this metaphor that in Poesy, the earth is called the wife of Odin. This is Thor's mother. Here is what Einvidr sang. Hermoder and Bragi spake Hropta Tyr. Go ye greet the prince, for a king who seemeth, a champion cometh to the hall hither. Thus sang Cormaker, the giver of lands. Steinthor, he called him the load of Gunnlaud's arm clasp. The ancient maid, though little, liquor of the valiant, load of Gunnlaud's arm clasp. Now, Gunnlaud was the giantess that was in the cave that had the mead of inspiration that Odin. Well, there's a lot to be said about that. A lot of people say it was deceitful. A lot of people say it was wrong, and there are some passages where he's pining away for the missed opportunity at loving someone. He may not have done the right thing. All men have kind of gone through that with a good woman. We may not have done the right thing. But I have heard, and I do like the idea that Bragi is the son of Odin and Gunnlaud and that mead of inspiration. And they're sitting there getting drunk on the shit, having a little soiree in the sheets, and Bragi comes of this. This is a good thing. Thus sang Ulfr Uggason, the victorious Odin, Eagle Skalgrimr, the high god, I offer, glad to behold him. So all of these poems kind of have this same idea behind them. They are glad to behold him. Yet has Mimir's friend on me bestowed amends of evil, which I account better. He's taking care of some stuff for him. He has given me the art. He, the wolf's opposer, he's called here, accustomed to battle of blemish blameless. Here he's called the high god, the friend of Mimir, and the adversary of the wolf. Thus sang Refr, the swift god of the slain. And Einar Tinklingskale called him the host god. Mead, 'tis mine to pour the liquor of the host god's mead cask freely before the ship's swift speeder. For this I win no scorning. Ulfr Uggason, his steed, the lordly Heimdallr, spurs to the pyre gods builded for the fallen son of Odin, the all-wise raven ruler. So he's often referred to in conjunction with some of these animals. And we get to this part. There's some important things there. There's still the remnants of animistic kind of spirituality that may be left over from a very primal time, way back in the Stone Age. Who's to say? But the idea that there was an important all-powerful deity who carried a spear, well, that's going to be the primary chieftain of any tribe that's hunting a mammoth or an aurochs. I mean, an aurochs was no small beast. This was, even in our runes, the wild, primal, feral power, the savagery of nature. And to conquer that, the guy with the biggest spear, the most skilled, that always struck what it hit and always killed what it hit, that would be an important thing. He's also known as that, the possessor of Gungnir. Now, in Eriksmal, what dream is that, quoth Odin? I thought to rise ere daybreak to make Valhall ready for troops of slain. I roused the champions, bade them rise swiftly, benches to strew, to wash beer flagons, the Valkyries to pour wine, as a prince were coming. And so as the Lord of Valhalla, he's got when I read that, all I could think of was basic training. Just getting up, rouse the troops, get up, clean everything up, let's get ready, new people are coming. There's an important distinction there, and I think that the discipline that's required of this faith many times appeals to the military individual because it gives them a real clear indication of where they might go and what that might look like. And that's something that I don't think we always had with some of the other spiritualities many of us have followed. Well, it's going to be okay, or somebody will take care of it, or Jesus take the wheel, or any of these other things that required me to trust in something more powerful than I am, which is not a bad thing. That's the very foundation of faith. But what do we become if we turn over the entirety of who we are to the probationary status of a God who may or may not approve of the things we've done in the past? something to consider. Cormacher saying this: the precious ruler of Yngve's people, Hropt, bore with him Gungnir, the mighty one of Hlidskjalf. Okay, that's the high seat. That's where he sits and overlooks it all. Surtur Sunkdale's the strong through spells, a swift flying boar. So sang Bragi, 'tis seen on my shield's surface how the son of the father of peoples craved to try his strength full swiftly against the rain-beat snake earth circling. Once again, Bragi is his father. Thus sang Einar, since lest with Bestla's offspring, Bestla is his mother. Then sang Thorvald Blimingskald, now have I much in the middle grasp of the son of Bor, of Buri's heir. That's his father and grandfather. Now, it goes through a lot of things here, talking about Kvasir and the mead of the Aesir, the giant's father ransom, the liquor of Odrir and of Bodin and of Son. But I wanted to touch base on just how many different views there are of Odin, because whatever you might do in life, whatever you might think, as you're walking down the street, there's going to be as many different images of you in someone else's mind as there are people. They're all going to look at you and see something much different than what you're thinking about. So perhaps thought and the ideas of ego may not necessarily be the best way for us to identify ourselves. We cannot become great just by the thinking. We've got to take action on it. So when we come to the other gods, what does it look like when we start talking about them? How are they known? Well, I got an answer for that too. And if I'd have been prepared, I would have been able to do a lot of this. Because he wants to know how these other gods should be paraphrased. Because when you call upon a god, you're trying to get every aspect of him to your side in a bloat or a sambal or something like that. And how they're known is by what they've done, who their father is, not what they think. How should one paraphrase Balder? By calling him the son of Odin and Frigg. That's an important distinction right there, because our ancestors, I've often said that the only thing the world will ever have to know about the quality of person you were in this life is the quality of people your children become. It's that simple. You know, husband of Nanna. Who did you marry? Did you marry well? Father of Forseti. Now, his son does quite well. His son takes over, and Forseti's the one who puts to sleep all suits. He is the possessor of Hringhorni and Draupnir. Now, Draupnir is the ring that drops 8 like it every 9th night. And that's a powerful chieftain that can hand out 8 armbands every 9th night. That's a very wealthy, powerful chieftain to have that many soldiers bound to you, because when you take an oath on that ring, you take an oath to serve, but there's also an obligation from the person offering the ring that he's going to do his best to make sure that all the other needs in your life are also taken care of. You're going to have a decent place, a decent community to live in. There will be law, there will be justice. Your family will be safe there. These are the responsibilities the one offering the ring takes upon himself, that he won't discard your life carelessly in battle. Balder is also known as the adversary of Hoder. Hoder's the one that shoots him in the chest. He is called companion of hell. And that's an interesting thing, because hell is, as I've said it, I'm going to say it again, what does she represent? Okay, there's a real the Christianization of the lore literally focuses around the goddess hell. Because you're going to have a real hard time if people are walking around with a praise song of Odin in their mouth, trying to convince them that this pacifist god, pacifist freedom fighter from the desert is really the one they should be following. Now, the hell, even Grimm said in the 1800s, the further you go back, the more prominent she becomes. And indeed, in every other culture, this goddess of her similar style and stature and standing and And what she does, they're all celebrated. There's a couple of them that are terrifying, but for the most part, the companion of hell is an interesting term because hell has rule over the realm, over death, over all the 9 realms. That's a hell of a lot of authority. Odin rules the living, hell rules the dead. That doesn't seem like a daughter of a man's ego that's out of control. Now, if you vilify that and you take away and create an unhealthy fear of the afterlife, well, you got a shot at usurping a religion. You got a shot at usurping a people's faith and replacing with one of your own that turns everybody into a sheep on a bended knee. But hell also has access to the accumulated knowledge of every individual that's passed before. Dwarf, giant, elf, god, human, what have you. She has access to all of it. And Balder is her companion, almost like a step-parent. In those days when even Thor it's either he's a foster father of or he's a foster son to a couple of individuals that live in the East. It's also he's always traveling to the East. Well, these foster familial relations reside out there. So that means Balder has access to that information as much as she wants to share with him. He's also known as the god of tears. Ulfr Uggason, following the story of Balder, has composed a long passage in the Husdrapa, and examples are recorded earlier to the effect that Balder is so termed. Okay? This is the one that comes back and fills Odin's stead with all of the accumulated knowledge that Hel will share with him. Now, what you need to remember is Odin did the same thing to her. So as he's hanging on the tree, sacrifice of himself to himself, at the very edge of death, as the doorways are opening to receive him into the afterlife, the sun-facing goddess is going to be there. She's not going to be sitting there saying, oh, finally I won. It's not going to be like Skeletor sitting somewhere claiming victory over something. She's going to be there. And this is when he hears the songs of his ancestors. And as he falls, he picks up the crystallized form of all that knowledge and what we know as the runes. So Balder is literally getting an education where Odin made the sacrifice of his ego to learn it, to pick it up, to try to get it. How he got cut down from that tree, I'm still firmly convinced that she cut him down. So there's an interesting dynamic there that is largely unexplored between Odin, Hel, and Balder that I think if we ever uncovered any of that, of any legitimate source beyond the things that I say, hell, I'm going to say it anyway, and it's still going to change Austria. You watch. That will change the dynamics of how we perceive this whole entire spirituality. Straw of death is not a bad thing. That's when you go to the halls of your ancestors. Hell rules over the god of your ancestors. Now, how should one paraphrase Njordr? By calling him the god of the Vanir. So he has every bit as much authority and strength and power as Odin does over the Aesir. Now, there is a passage that says that he has dominion over fire and water. So he's got both ends of the spectrums of Ginnungagap as it becomes into the steam and turns into rhyme and things begin to create. I discuss it at length in my book, In Blind in One Eye. So Njord is no joke. He is the kinsman of the Vanir or Vane, father of Frey and Freyr, and god of wealth bestowal. And that's a real interesting term because his two children literally represent abundance in about every aspect that they partake in a human's life. Love, the harvest, they just represent abundance. And Njord is a god of wealth bestowal. What an interesting idea, because nobody ever really talks about that. Everyone wants to talk about Odin and being capable of the ecstatic state of passion, of being able to write and poet and being the berserker warrior. But here's one that's every bit as powerful as he is, that is a god of wealth bestowal, the fortunes of the sea itself. So says Theodor Seriksson. Gudrun self by ill her sons did kill. The wise God's bride at the wain's side. Grieved men tell, Odin tamed steeds well. T was not the saying, Hamidir spared the sword playing. Here it is recorded that Skadi departed from Njord, as has already been written. Now, Skadi and Njord, the short tale on that is they killed her father, and she buckled up her byrnie and went for war and went to the gates of Asgard and said, "You bastards owe me." And so they made a deal with him, and or her. Said she could pick a husband, but she might only look at his feet. And she picked the one with the prettiest feet because surely that would be Balder. Turns out it was that nice, soft sand scrub on the pretty feet of a beach boy, of a surfer boy, Njord. And he wanted to live by the sea. She wanted to live in the mountains. And the two simply couldn't figure it out. So she lives in the mountains and he lives in the sea. The rivers, the snow melts in the mountaintops, runs down the rivers and into the sea, only to evaporate and rise again through the heavens, fall as snow. There's a connection there. It's a very early tale of how all of it tied together. What else was I going to say about him? Anyway, to get to his children, Frey is called the adversary of Beli, even as Evander, spoiler of Skald, sang, when the Earl's foe wished to inhabit the outer bounds of Beli's hater. So that's a giant that Frey killed. He had a sword that was so skillful, so powerful that it fought of its own accord, and that whoever so possessed it would win every battle. He sacrificed that sword to his young manservant, Skirnir, like a brother to him, so he might take a woman's hand in marriage. He set aside the violent ways of the warrior to become the lover and the husband. But he also has a boar. Ivaldi's offspring in ancient days went to shape Skidbladnir, foremost of ships, fairly for Frey, choicely for Njord's child. So Frey also has the best of ships that fold up neatly and go into his pocket, the greatest of ships. And then Ulf Ugerson said, the battle-bold Frey rideth first on the golden-bristled barrow boar to the balefire of Balder and leads the people. That's an interesting thing to say when you say leads the people. So he's riding a great golden-bristled boar to the balefire of Balder's funeral, and he leads the people. A god of the gentle summer rain, a solar deity, whose wife is the northern lights. He has a golden boar. And I'll tell you why the boar is important. The boar was the instrument that taught man how to harvest, that taught man how to plant, that changed him from a hunter-gatherer into an agricultural society. Watching the boar root around in the woods, and acorns fall and trees grow, they'd root around and tear up these furrows, and things would fall into them, and they would cover them up, and they would plant. And who knows how long ago men began to watch these boars tearing shit up, and then when they go back, why, it's been fertilized, it's been plowed up, and look at this stuff that's growing here I can eat. Wouldn't take long to figure that out once you got around a bunch of them. So this Frey, this god of abundance, who is the son of the wealth bestower, is literally riding the very image, has at his command the very image of that tool, of that animal, of the animistic past that showed men how to plant and to harvest. And he leads the people. He was, I don't know if he was the center figure at the Temple of Uppsala or not, but it was Odin, Frey, and Thor at the Temple of Uppsala, 3 statues of him. So he was a very prominent figure. And on an uninterrupted timeline, who's to say that in today's world, it might not be Frey as the primary god, the harvest. The boar is also called the fearful tusk. Now, it keeps on going. How should one paraphrase Heimdall? By calling him the son of 9 mothers, or watchman of the gods, as has already been written, or white god, or foe of Loki, and the seeker of Freya's necklace. All of those represent deeds he has done, not things he has thought. Now, the son of nine mothers, some people want to say it's the nine ways, but elsewhere in this tale, it tells that it was Gerador's nine daughters that bore him. The watchman of the gods, he stands there at the guard of the Grangebow Bridge. He is as much the warder of heaven as Thor is the warder of men. The white god, the whitest of gods. There's a symbolism of purity there. And that purity is not sexual prudence. That purity is one of a thought process that is higher minded than others. That's why he is the foe of Loki. Loki is entirely the ego out of control. He is the uninspired human intellect, and his opponent at the end of all things will be the higher minded thought process that has no use for the ruinous ideas that sometimes abound in the egos of men's minds. He's the seeker of Freya's necklace, and that's an interesting story too, and perhaps someday we'll go over it. But he was responsible for finding the Brisingamen gem and giving it to Freya. So this individual who is the warder of Asgard, who has a higher mind, a Hurmat, as Valerie calls it all the time, this high-minded thought process that is absent of the ego that resides upon skill and determination and action, is the one that brings the Brisingamen gem, which is the fire, which represents the fires of human intellect, and lays it around the goddess of love's neck. There's an action behind every one of those things. There's some deeper meaning behind all of that. And that's how the gods are known. Okay. Now he is a sword is called Heimdallr's head, for it is said that he was pierced by a man's head. The tale thereof is told in Heimdallr Galdr, and ever since a head is called Heimdallr's measure. So there's once again a reference to the head of a man, the thought process. And the two tie together neatly if you pay attention to it. A sword is called a man's measure. Heimdallr is the possessor of Gulltoppr. He is also frequenter of Vagaskr and Singestein, where he contended with Loki for the necklace Brisingamen. So this high-minded thought process got into a physical tussle with this ego-driven individual who represents the uninspired, uninitiated man or human intellect who does not understand the interaction of the divine for this necklace that represents the fires of mankind's intellect. Does it need to be ruled by the ego-driven idea that I will sit here and I will think and type things on my keyboard and that's how fucking important I'll be? Or do I need to be the higher-minded individual who will go out there and put that in its place and put the fires of inspiration exactly where they need to be, around the neck of love? He is also called Vindler. Ulfr Uggason composed a long passage in the Husdrapa on that legend, and there it is written that they were in the form of seals. Heimdallr is also a son of Odin and the nine mothers. How should one paraphrase Tyr? By calling him the one-handed god. How did he get one hand? He sacrificed a hand out of love for the safety of his community. That wolf would not be bound unless he placed his hand in the wolf's mouth. And as soon as he figured out he was bound, he bit it clean off. Everybody laughed at him, but he did the right thing at the end of the day. At the end of the day, he did the right thing, and now he's known as the one-handed god. And fosterer of the wolf, because he raised that wolf. When everybody else was afraid, instead of just killing this pup, he took it in and raised it. So he is the god of battles and the son of Odin. Now, God of battles does not mean legal disputes. And that's one of my pet peeves when people make an offering to Tyr, this god of battles, who is elsewhere mentioned as not known as a reconciler of men, instead of Forseti, who is the judge that puts to sleep all suits. How should one paraphrase Bragi? By calling him the husband of Idun. So he wooed and successfully gained the hand of Idun, and the first maker of poetry. Now, if he is indeed the son, as I'm sure there's a legend somewhere that calls him the son of Gunnlod and Odin, he would be the first maker of poetry. He would actually be the product of love between two individuals who were getting drunk on the mead of inspiration. And what kind of great individual might that be? One who has a silver tongue, for sure. And the long-bearded god, after his name. A man who has a great beard is called Beardbragi, and the son of Odin. So these last three are all known as sons of Odin. Their father has done great things. Being a son of Odin doesn't necessarily make you great. It means that there's kind of an obligation to live up to here. Okay? How should one paraphrase Vidar? He may be called the silent god, possessor of the iron shoe, and foe and slayer of Fenris Wolf, avenger of the gods, divine dweller in the homestead of the fathers, a son of Odin, and a brother of the Aesir. So now interestingly enough, this is one of the gods that survive. Now, after the Fenris Wolf devours Odin, Vidar steps up to the plate. He is the silent god, don't talk much, big, strong, doesn't say, he's possessor of the iron shoe. He has one shoe that's got a real thick sole. And I'm not sure exactly how the legend goes, but when people would cobble a shoe, extra leather would be placed somewhere as an offering to Vidar, so he might rip that wolf's head apart. He puts a shoe on that iron shoe on the lower jaw, he rips him apart and avenges his father. All the rest of the gods are dead. He is now a divine dweller in the homesteads of the fathers. That is what is left after Ragnarok. That is green fields that bear fruit ripened, unsown, and they sit at tables in green grass. He is a son of Odin, but now that they're all gone, he is known as the brother of the Aesir. How should Vali be paraphrased? Thus by calling him son of Odin and Rindr. And there are two legends about Odin and Rindr. One is that she was in love. There was a courtship. There was a legitimate thing. The other was that he ran down there and raped her. He's the stepson of Frigg, the brother of the Aesir. He is also one that survives Ragnarok. So the son of Odin is key, but the fact that they survive Ragnarok, they're now known as a brother of the Aesir because there's something else now, aren't they? He is Baldur's avenger. He was born, grown to manhood in one night, and he avenged the death of his brother. He killed Hodor. He is the foe and slayer of Hodor. So there's two deeds right there. He avenged Baldur. He is the foe and slayer of Hodor. He is the dweller in the homesteads of the fathers. Once again, that's the green fields that bear ripened fruit unsown after Ragnarok. How should one paraphrase Hodor? Thus by calling him the blind god. So there's an attribute. Baldur slayer, there's a deed. Thor of the mistletoe, there's a deed. A son of Odin. And interestingly enough, he is also known as a companion of Hel. So what might he be learning? So Baldur and Hodor are both gone. One killed the other. One was deceived by the ego, and they are both a companion of Hel. And as I said, Hel has access to the combined knowledge of all of the dead races. What they might know, what they might think, what they might feel, 1,000 million different scenarios and variations and elements of love and hate, skill and knowledge, math and everything else. Hel has access to all of it. So Hodor and Baldur are both companions of Hel, almost like a stepmother, because I don't think they're having a kinky three-way. And he is the foe of Vali. So Vali is the one that killed him. So that's going to be his enemy. Now, interesting enough, after Ragnarok, both Hodor and Baldur take up refuge in Hropp's battle hall. And that is Valhalla. And it says that all deeds are forgiven. It's an interesting thing. So what did she teach them that allowed them to adopt a state of mind where they might share together and live in Valhalla as brothers that, you know what, man, I get it. I understand. It's all right. Come on in here. Let's have a horn. There's something real important going on there that we need to pay attention to. How should Ullr be paraphrased? By calling him the son of Sif, the stepson of Thor. So he's got a fine heritage there. This is one of the first ones that's not a son of Odin. He's a stepson of Thor, god of the snowshoe, god of the bow, the hunting god, god of the shield. So this is an accomplished, skilled individual in the woods and on the battlefield. Kind of guy you want to have at your side. There are a lot of legends about how important he is to have in the battle. How should Honor be paraphrased? By calling him benchmate or companion or friend of Odin, the swift god, the long-footed, and the king of clay. So he's swift, he's long-footed, almost like Mercury. He is, or Hermes, he is the benchmate or the companion or friend of Odin. And this is his best bud. How should one paraphrase Loki? Calling him the son of Faurbooty and Laufey, or of Nil, brother of Baelister and Helblindi, father of the monster of Van, that is the Fenris wolf, and of the vast monster, that is the Midgard serpent. Those two I get. And of Hel, that's not the case. And Nari and Ali, kinsman and uncle, evil companion and benchmate of Odin and of the Aesir. He is the individual that has a seat at the table, but cannot or will not measure up to what it means to sit at that table. Well, I'm already here. I don't need to change anything about myself. I don't understand how you guys are dealing with each other, but I'm going to continue to sit here and be a dick. And that's exactly what happens till they bind him up and tie him up with his son's guts, and then then Scotty hangs a serpent over his head, and his wife Sigyn, or girlfriend Sigyn, has to sacrifice everything she might ever thought she could be because this man's ego is out of control. And every time she fails to keep the venom off of his face, she gets a good right cussing for it. Visitor and chest trapping of Gerador. He set up that whole confrontation between Thor and Gerador lost his life because of it. Thief of the giants, of the goats, he broke the goat's leg. Of the Brisingamen, he stole the Brisingamen gin, and of Idun's apples, he stole the apples. Kinsman of Sleipnir, he's the father, or mother, as you have it. The husband of Sigyn, the foe of the gods. The harmer of Sif's hair. Now that harmer of Sif's hair is not just that he cut off her hair. The hair was symbolic of feminine beauty in that time. To cut off her hair is kind of an allegory for the rape of Sif. And in that violent action, he owes more than just Thor something. He owes the entirety of the community something. All of the gods, all of the royalty, all of the big house is owed an amends for this heinous crime against one of the noble ladies. It probably should still be that way. The forger of evil and sly god, slanderer and cheat of the gods, contriver of Baldur's death, he's done that. The bound god, he's been tied up. The wrangling foe of Heimdall, once again, the high-minded individual of the white, which is a symbol of purity, the pure thought process, contends with the egotistical nature that is always kind of a tug of war in every man. Do I go ahead and boost my ego and talk about this, or do I let it go and realize that I'm still okay after all, and go do something instead of think something so that people might perceive me as great? A real interesting dynamic there that we need to be paying attention to. It's mentioned again right here. Now, there's nothing positive in that outline of this individual. And yet I still see people talking about him in a positive light. Well, I really understand. What the fuck do you understand? I don't think so. I don't think the connection's been made. And that's probably going to upset a lot of people, and I really don't care because I'm pretty decisive about this. This is the uninspired human intellect that does not understand the interactions and workings of the divine and humanizes it in an attempt that allows us to no longer consider it divine. So if you want to steal the divinity of an idea, while you put human characteristics on that deity, and then people are going to say, well, that's really not worth following. I don't really want to follow that. That's not really. I'll just stick over here in the church because he's gave his only begotten son and blah blah blah. What you have here is a much clearer understanding of the nature of man himself, and that we do have to contend with this within ourselves on a daily basis. The advent of social media has magnified that 1,000 times. And yet here this tale that was put to paper 1,000 years ago and is much, much older than all of that, you have a clear understanding that you don't want to call it evil, but you're dealing very much with the internal struggles that men and women have in dealing with their own thought process. Do we want to indulge in the Hurmot, the high-minded, noble thought process of the order of heaven, which is pretty important, or do we want to engage in the kind of egotistical idea where we will steal, cheat, lie, murder, whatever it needs to do to make sure everyone understands we're important without ever trying to measure up to the assembled host that we've been fortunate enough to find ourselves amongst? Something worth paying attention to. Now, then it goes on to some other stories here, but I want to go down. This is how the gods were paraphrased by their deeds. And that's always important for us to understand. We know these gods because of their deeds, even though we may not understand the detail and the interaction with how these gods work together. We might try to understand that it's going to be beyond our human comprehension, and that any kind of words that we want to associate with that is really going to shortchange the effort of what we're trying to hold as holy and bolster in our lives. How should one paraphrase Frigg? She is the daughter of Fjorgyn, the wife of Odin, the mother of Balder, the co-wife of Jord and Rindr and Gunlod and Gridr, the mother-in-law of Nanna, the lady of the Aesir and the Aesir, the mistress of Fulla and of the hawk plumage and of Fensalir. So we have a real different idea here concerning masculine and feminine energies that's clearly outlined. All of these things, all of these children, all of these co-wives go on to be great individuals. How should one paraphrase Freya? Thus by calling her the daughter of Njord. Let's not forget that. The sister of Frey, the wife of Odin, the mother of Hnoss, the possessor of the slain of Sesfrimir. She gets first pick of the fallen of every battle. And they go to, she is the possessor of the slain, and of the Gibcats, and of the Brisingamen. The Gibcats are the cats that pull her chariot. The Brisingamen is the necklace that represents the fires of human intellect. The goddess of the Vanir, the lady of the Vanir, the goddess beautiful in tears. Because like most women, there's something in her life that's caused her pain. She is the goddess of love. And all the goddesses may be paraphrased thus, by calling them by the name of another and naming them in terms of their possessions or their works or their kindred. That's how the women are called. And this is how you fly with the eagles instead of run around with the turkeys. Because your partner deserves to have some kind of glory as well. To be held in high esteem, not as a scully maid pouring the mead for everybody, but to be held in high esteem as someone doing very important work, as a mother, as a partner, as the goddess of her own hearth. This is an important distinction. Men are known by their deeds, and it's the same thing in art. Look at any great illustrations of art, the great paintings that you see. You will always see the man in some kind of action, astride a horse or in battle, or some kind of sailing a ship or searching the way or doing something. And those are the ones that people gravitate towards as the masculine idea of energy. These are what people see. And with the feminine, all she has to do is sit there and smile. And we will do just about anything if we might be the recipient of just such a smile. The beauty of a woman is one of those things, she doesn't have to do anything to change the world other than smile at the right person, or be the mother of a strong man or a strong daughter, or, you see what I'm saying? It's a complementing, competing energy that is always rotating. It is very much the idea of yin and yang in full effect. Now, I am not saying women need to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Please do not get that. What I'm saying is that everything they do is so vitally important, from the time a man is born and the changing of his diapers and the first sets of instructions he is given as a young boy and the idea she places in his head to become a valuable member of the community until he leaves to go become a warrior and train. And then he takes a wife, and then he has a daughter, and then now he's got a mother and a grandmother and a daughter and a wife until he gets old and a woman takes care of him. And then when he dies, it's a woman that prepares him for death. And then when he passes through the veil, it's a woman that receives him, be it a Valkyrie or Hel herself. So we have to realize sometimes we're just along for the ride, and there's a lot of fucking work to do with it. How should Sif be paraphrased? By calling her wife of Thor, mother of Uller, fair-haired goddess, co-wife of Jarn Saxa, mother of Thrudr. So she is the wife of Thor. There's a lot of authority there. The mother of Uller, what a fine son to raise. The fair-haired goddess, her beauty is without equal. The co-wife of Jarn Saxa, the mother of Thrudr, and some people call her the third norm. How should Item be paraphrased? Thus by calling her the wife of Bragi, the keeper of the apples. And the keeper of the apples is a real important thing. And the apples should be called age elixir of the Aesir. She's also called the spoil of the giant Thiazi because he kidnapped her, or Loki kidnapped her and gave him to her, according to the tale that's been told before. Yeah, he kidnapped her, got himself a pretty little arm piece for a wife, and put her in a cage called marriage, and then that bastard went fishing, and that's how he lost her. And it could be fishing or video games or anything else, but that's how he lost her. That's a big, long story. Now, it goes through the heavens, it goes through the winds, it goes through the earth, it goes through the sea. How should they be paraphrased? How should we paraphrase the sun? The daughter of Mundulfari, sister of the moon, the wife of Glenner, fire of heaven and of the air. How should one paraphrase fire? How should winter be paraphrased? How should one paraphrase summer? And here's the one we need to talk about. How should man be paraphrased? So we've got the gist of it, that the gods are known by their actions, those things they have accomplished, those great things they have done. And the women that accompany them are known because their husbands have done great and terrible things to protect and defend and honor them. And they have borne fine sons, and they have done wonderful things. And, you know, there are few things more pleasant in this world than walking into a home and realizing it's a beautiful, has a feel to it that is charming. And that is the result of everything that a spouse does or people do together to create a warm and loving home. You can feel it when you walk in. But how should a man be paraphrased? By his works, by that which he gives or receives or does. He may also be paraphrased in terms of his property, the things that he owns, those things which he possesses, and if he be liberal, of his liberality. Likewise in terms of the families from which he descended, as well as those which have sprung from him. How is one to paraphrase him in terms of this? Thus by calling him an accomplisher or performer of his goings or his conduct or of his battles or sea voyages or huntings or weapons or ships. And because he is a tester of weapons and a winner of battles, the words for winner and wood being the same, as are also those for tester and rowan. Therefore, from these phrases, scholars have called man ash or maple, grove, or other masculine tree names. The ash of battle, I believe Brunhild called Sigurd, and paraphrased him in such expressions in terms of battles or ships or possessions. It is also correct to paraphrase man with all the names of the Aesir, also with giant terms. And this last is for the most part for mocking or libellous purposes. Paraphrases with the names of the elves is held to be favorable. So a man is known by his deeds. We are our deeds. And if you're the kind of individual that says, okay, I'm going to be here, be there. If you're the kind of individual that says, all right, I'll take this job. I may not like it. It might suck. That does not excuse you from going out there and doing the very best you can at it every day. If you don't like it, find a new job. If you don't like it, build a new fortune. Because this is how we are known. We're not known by the things that we say or think. We're known by the things that we do. And if we screw up, we got to fix that. You see, this is the thing that I see a lot of people missing. When I talk about King Gylfi first entering the hall of the Aesir and being distracted by the man juggling 7 laces, I'm talking about the individual that finally enters into the Aesir and finds Asatru, and the first thing he does is become distracted by all of these numerous things flying around in the air that any one of them might make me feel more important than I truly am if I but discuss them, if I but get carried away about it, if I begin to talk about them. Or Similarly, if I don't do anything, if I say I'm going to do it and then don't do it, and not only not do it, make sure that the persons involved in it understand they're not really important at all about it. That's a real important thing to understand, because that's how people are known. That's how a man is known. Do you follow through on your word? Are you going to be where you say you're going to be? Are you sliding to the individuals who are more than willing to accommodate you so you might succeed? Because I see a lot of heathens using it as an excuse not to do anything. And yet the most important thing we might ever do is accomplish things, build those possessions so that we might hand them down to our children, not because it makes us greater. Yeah, it's important to have all that stuff. You can be as zen as you want to, but at some point, you're going to have to pay grandma's medical bill. At some point, you're going to have to go to the doctor. Zen don't pay the bills. Electric comes due every month. Matter of fact, success, the rent for success is due every single day. You got to get up and accomplish something. We got to do something. We're known by our works. What are our works? What are my works? What does it look like when I begin to fire on all cylinders and put my best foot forward? Is it something worthy of remark? It says elsewhere in the lore that whenever men went to battle with the prince knew he couldn't be outdone, but every man out there was doing his best to outdo the prince and measure up to the standard, truly struggling, truly embracing what it means to be great, truly trying. When we fall into this idea, we change the spiritual foundations of our world and we call ourselves also true, we adopt that same thing. We come to the mindset of, I'm going to do my best to measure up. I'm going to do my best to outdo my teacher. I'm going to do my best to be worthy of remark. Now, I promise you it's real easy to get that remark with infamy, but you can also do it with some really good deeds. It was liberality. I remember when I started Nana's Hearth, there was a real uproar amongst the Theodish community that I didn't understand what I was doing, and this is not what heathenry is all about. It's all about perseverance and self-reliance and all these other things. Sometimes people can be as self-reliant as they need to, but they need a little bit of breathing room to be able to do it. So I started Nana's Hearth and handed out money and handed out food and many other things. And today it's AFA Folk Services, and it helps a lot of people and continues to. I mean, they have a food bank every Saturday out there at Odenshoff. They'll be doing one in North Carolina. They'll be doing one in Minnesota as well. Shoes and coats, and cold weather stuff for people that don't have it. We'll give it away, and we're not going to ask anything for it. You need something? Come on in. You can have it. We will be known by our liberality, and so will I. Now, woman should be paraphrased with reference to all female garments, gold and jewels, ale or wine or any other drink, or to that which she dispenses or gives. Likewise, with references to ale vessels and to all those things which it becomes her to perform or to give, it is as correct to paraphrase her thus, by calling her a giver or user of that which she partakes. But the words for giver and user are also names of trees. Therefore, woman is called in metaphorical speech by all feminine tree names. The birch, the willow. Woman is paraphrased with reference to jewels or agates for this reason. In heathen times, what was called a stone necklace, which they wore about the neck, was a part of a woman's apparel. Now it is used figuratively in such a way as to paraphrase a woman with stones and all names of stones. Woman is also metaphorically called by the names of the Aesir or the Valkyries or the Norns or women of supernatural kind. It is also correct to paraphrase woman in terms of all her conduct or property or family. If it's done right, and you can find a place or build a place, one of the great deeds that every man should be able to accomplish is to build an environment where a woman might feel safe to express the beauty of who she is. Because that, my friends, is a true treasure. I don't remember exactly what the quote is, but there was a real attempt here not to denigrate. And in today's world, much of what is said there, you would have your feminists say, well, that's just keeping her pregnant in the kitchen. And no, it was a true mark of respect, of love, of admiration, of the ability to break my back to make sure that someone had what they needed. Someone was safe to express the beauty of who she was, because let's face it, we live in a world where it's not exactly for a woman to express anything. So how do we fix that? Well, we begin to understand that we're going to be known by our deeds. And if you've been a shitheel all your life, fix it. Quit screwing around and fix it. Grow up a little bit. Be a man. We have daughters to raise. I have a 9-year-old little girl. I want my little girl to be recognized like that. I want her to be recognized as the beautiful soul that she is by the man that loves her. And I will crack his skull if he does not. This is what we're looking for here. This is what we're trying to build. This is the kind of thing that makes the world a better place. We have so many people out here not living up to the expectation of we are our deeds, because that's all we are. Like I said at the beginning, I can walk down the street and meet 1,000 people, and every one of those 1,000 is going to have a different image of me. But if I want them to remember me, they can remember he is an author. He is the founder of a great charity. He is a man who has a beautiful daughter. He has created an environment where she thrives. And those are the kind of things that we want to be striving for. If I go and say, well, I've got $1 million in the bank, so what? What's that matter? It means I understand how to work the markets and make money. Does that make me anything? Does that make me more important than someone else? Not by any stretch of the imagination. If that individual is out there on the battlefield doing his level best and surviving every day, that man's the one doing something, not me. I'm just sitting here watching TV and potato chips with $1 million in the bank. Sounds comfortable, doesn't it? It's what we've been told is the thing to do. Those people die early. Grandpa lived to 90 because he never stopped moving. I won't either. It's those things we got to embrace that are the challenges of life. It's real easy to sit down and not want to improve how great I am and tell everybody how right I am. I am a Virgo, and the number one rule is I am right. I can get on this keyboard and type a whole bunch of things and argue with a whole bunch of people trying to prove how right I am. That does nothing to create an action worthy of remark. Don't do it. Don't argue with them people on the internet. It's not an act of valor. It's not an act of courage. It's not anything worth doing. It is a constant stimulus that agitates our ego and makes us feel like we're more important than we really are. We are known by our deeds, and these women are known by the beauty of the things that surround them. Perhaps we should begin to consider that when we start looking at the people we wish to associate with. And we'll say this, the AFA does a lot of things, but what it can do is pull a lot of people together. And there have been a lot of things going on with COVID that most every bit of it is a lie or it's a half-truth. And there's nothing more dangerous in this world than a half-truth. Loki exemplifies that idea of the half-truth. But our people believed in this enough that we were strong enough to get together and pass a horn. And nobody got sick. Nobody got sick at all. So it makes me wonder, do we have blessing from on high, or is this all a big lie? I'd say you could take your pick, tell you the truth. Whichever one's going to make your life go better, whichever one's going to embolden you to go out and do something that makes you feel like you're worthy of remark. When you sit there in the third round of Stumble with the boast and toast, and you stand up and you have something to boast about. And that's the important thing. Live a life in such a manner that when you stand up, you have something worth boasting about. Because 90% of the people in this world don't. They get up, they go to work, they come home, they eat dinner, they go to bed, They get up, they go to work, they come home, they eat dinner, they go to bed, they get drunk all weekend long, they go to bed, they get up, they go to work. Somewhere in the middle of all that, as heathens, we begin to condense every day. It seems like a person that's living this life right has about a 5 year for every person's 1 year in the regular world, of the things we've done, of the things we've accomplished, of the people we've met, of the places we've gone. It's if we're doing it, we're always busy. But that's how we live. It's our deeds that make us who we are. So with all of that said, I'm done yammering. If anybody got any questions, I'd be happy to take them right now. No? Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Well, I've got a comment on what you were saying about
Hang
the
on.
COVID thing.
I can't, let's see here. There we go. Try it now.
Okay. I
Now I
got a
can hear
comment. Okay. Got a comment on the COVID thing. I work at the nursing home up here.
Yes.
We've had 5 or 6 false positives up there.
Believe it.
And the funny thing is, they do the false positives. They send the information over to the health department. Health department posts it. We send them the information that, it was a false positive. They don't take it down. So
Believe it. It doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit the narrative. I don't think we could have got this. I don't think it could have been more wrong. And just now they're asking us to wear masks. And I'm sitting here going, I don't really think that matters.
Well,
I'll wear it. I feel kind of cool with it.
Most masks won't stop the common cold. They're not made for that. They're literally made to stop stuff from splattering in your face or you coughing into somebody's open body in a wound while they're performing surgery. They're not made to do what they're people that wear the cloth masks, that doesn't do anything at all. There's no filtration for viruses. You have to have something rated for that. I've worked a couple of quarantines where the CDC actually puts a little thing on the door that says, this is a quarantine zone. Unless there is a filtration system in that, it doesn't do a thing.
Well, all I can tell you is when I have to go to a Porta John and I'm wearing one of the masks, it doesn't help a damn bit. So I don't feel real confident in its ability to stop that virus. And I just found a fancy bandana. It looks kind of like an ascot. I sport it. I feel pretty good about it. As long as you got a face mask on.
Like other things that are kind of crap and people know it. Like I just look at them and laugh and be like, cool story, bro. Nobody ever gives me crap about walking in a store without one. Just call it out for what it is.
They hand me a mask. Would you like a mask, sir? Why, yes, I would.
I just go, thanks, but no thanks. Appreciate the thought, though. Keep on walking. Don't even stop.
I've only worn a mask to the doctor. It's the only place I've worn one.
Yeah. Oh, I wear it because I feel sneaky. I feel like I can go ninja at any moment. I don't care, man. I really don't. It's all too stupid for words, and it's ruined our economy.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been so busy on my website and my Patreon. I got laid off Wednesday. Just out of the blue. I'm gonna lay you off, man. You're done. Oh, okay. So if you haven't been to my Patreon, by all means, get your ass over and check it out.
Sorry to hear that. Shoot me a link. I'll try to spread that around for you.
Just go to brianwilton.com. It's all over it.
Keeping it simple.
Keep it simple.
If you somehow forget,
Brian.
forget that simpleness, the link for the Patreon is also in the Noble Minded Heathen.
Yeah, I don't remember what it is.
I appreciate idiot-proof things. I get distracted really easily, so.
Yeah, I know. I do too. It's the shiny rocks get me every time.
I don't know if I say it's rocks that get me every time, but
Squirrels.
yes.
Squirrels.
Squirrel.
Yeah.
Yes, squirrels too. Yes, that too. Squirrel. Whatever.
We'll go with squirrels.
Anyway,
Hey, Brian, we were talking about how people say that they identify with Loki and stuff. Back when I was an admin on Facebook for a group called Odin's Children for a while, about 7 months later it was. You remember?
yes, I do remember them.
It was actually a pretty good group for a while there, but we had Clifford on there as an admin and everything too. But we'd always get these guys coming in saying, I worship Loki and all this, and I identify with Loki. And I'm like, and I tried to engage with these people and say, try to, I don't know if reason with them was the right word. I'm just trying to figure out their motivation behind it.
The problem with those, sorry.
Go ahead.
The problem with those kind of people is they embrace chaos. They like that. They need that. They feed off of that. That's kind of life they like to live, is embracing chaos.
There was usually some kind of deviancy in their life, and they felt that was an expression of that. And I always brought back, how can you say you?
There's a lot of feedback going on.
There was always
Jason.
there was always a question, how can you say that you follow the Aesir if you worship Loki? And they said, well, why wouldn't I? And I'm like, well, for one, you're saying, hey, Odin, I'm with you and your crew and all, but I'm gonna go hang out with the guy that killed your son. Have fun.
I'm a firm believer in that we need him for balance. We do. There's no escaping that. But there is a whole sect of people who sit there and are like, oh, that's something to emulate, and that's not cool. That's not cool to me. Well, there's a literal cult of Loki.
He's more of an object lesson than something to follow, though. He's the example of the problem as opposed to the solution.
Yeah, that's what not to do. So why sit there and embrace that?
Because it's edgy and it's cool. And lots of people, when they come into Ossetru and see so many people that have been around for a while, and they it seems like everybody's written a damn book, and they know so much. How else are you going to jump to the seat of, everybody comes in here and it's always such an overpowering sensation for people, and they want to get to the front of the line. They want to be viewed as important. They want to do this. And one of the coolest, quickest way to do it is to take a shortcut. That's why I don't teach the runes except on my other site, but everybody wants to use it as a shortcut. People will grab a hold of that kind of chaotic, edgy and cool kind of deal, and see if they can make them feel like they're important, or their voice will be heard. They have no idea that the scorn being brought to them by the size of their belly.
Ego, just like you said, Loki.
It is.
All ego.
I've talked about that a lot. I've written about it a lot too. And there's a real powerful video on ego by several of the top minds with regards to self-improvement and psychology that discuss exactly what that is. And it is, and unfortunately, all the way back at the beginning, you have Madame Blavatsky and some of these other individuals talking about, well, the ego, you need some ego, it's important. And I think that statement is based upon an incomplete lack of knowledge concerning what it truly is. And, it's in today's day and age, when we are so isolated, when we are so dependent upon these kinds of digital forms of communication, it's easy for me to put on a front. It's easy for me to show up and say all the right things, and not have to do anything. But if I have Chase to the house, or Justin Garcia happen to show up at his house, or some of these other people that I know and call friends, and I show up and they see you're full of shit, that's not going to go over very well. You want to associate with individuals that are really trying, and I don't get that with those Loki inspired individuals. I don't get that. I see the individual that is simply using this newfound path to justify excesses of personal behavior that got him in a shit ton of trouble to begin with.
It's the devil's scapegoat. It's the bargaining. Like when people go to jail, and immediate first thing to do is, my God, if you get me out of this, I will do this and I will do that and blah, blah, blah. And the devil just did this to me, but I will submit myself to you. Yeah, bargaining. That's the bargaining chip all the way. And the people that I feel embrace that kind of low-key bullshit are the ones that do that in Christianity, even though they don't know that they're doing it. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a way. Yeah, it's hard to teach. It's hard to teach an individual in that situation and in that mindset. It's hard to. It's a very difficult mindset from which one might learn, and that's the biggest drawback to it. I mean, their behaviors are going to be their behavior, but an individual like that, what are they ever going to learn? Is there going to ever be a depth to their spirituality? And the problem with it is those are the first individuals that go back to Christianity when the time comes for them, when they come across a problem that they find themselves all of a sudden with no tools necessary to take action to handle the difficulty, to handle the task at hand. They find themselves without any tools necessary to navigate some of the more complex emotional arrangements between individuals. It's very difficult to stand there and understand that when you're so convinced of how important you are. And it's a real, so even at the person level, so we see what it says about it between the gods. At the person level, you have the same kind of detrimental effect upon the spirituality, upon the assembled group of individuals by even one person. Henry Ford said it best: if you have one individual in a factory of 100 people who has a bad attitude, it will spread through that factory like a cancer and ruin productivity.
Wildfire.
Yes. And it's the same thing with those kind of individuals. So let's say you're sitting at the table with one and he starts talking about it. It's worse than a vegan, I think. She just starts talking about it. And pretty soon everybody at the table is offended, just like Eager's Feast. Nobody's enjoying their meal. Their negative emotions are spreading out and literally contaminating the water they drink, the food they eat. And now all of a sudden the meal is not such an enjoyable affair. And you
Locust
can't
Center
change
all
their
over.
minds. Huh?
Locust Center all over again.
Yes.
Yeah. Poison. It spreads.
So, and I guess the best way when we talk about that, the best way to deal with that is our own actions, because that builds confidence. When you accomplish something, when you get out there and do something and you've really achieved something great, there's a confidence that goes with that for myself, I found that I didn't need to talk about how right I was anymore. I make fun of it now because I've accomplished a couple of things. I've done some things in this world. I have a list of achievements. Now, they do not define me. I think would be the best way. That is not the definition of who I am, the list of achievements, because I think we are all so much more than that. But what it does is it gives a solid framework for individuals to be able to relate to each other in a healthy manner. And I think that's what we're sorely lacking at many different levels of society, is the ability for individuals to relate to each other in a healthy manner based upon achievement, based upon the idea that we have embraced the struggle and tried.
I think part of it is taking responsibility too. I mean, when we're talking about scapegoats, I mean, I knew a woman that her husband was cheating on her and it was the devil's fault. And like, nope, he made that choice. You got to hold him accountable or he's just going to do it again. And I see that a lot with,
So
these small town Christians and everything that is done that's bad is the devil's fault.
Never do business with a Christian when he's got God on his side telling him how to fuck you on the deal. I've this last company I worked for, it was a family-owned operation, and they knew how to make money. Don't get me wrong, they knew how to make money, but they couldn't run a business to save their life. One of the things that I noticed that really troubled me was that they were never willing to accept responsibility for anything. If something went wrong, there would always be a reframing of the argument to make sure it was their fault, and never accepting responsibility for poor planning, raw material, shortage of manpower, things, poor leadership, poor instruction, and they would stab you in the owner's son was particularly bad about it. That dude would stab you in the back in a heartbeat if he thought it could make him look better instead of trying to measure up. I mean, he flunked out of college his first semester because he was drinking too much, came home to ride daddy's coattails, and then proceeded to run his mouth like he knew something. It was horrible. It was a horrible work environment. But that is key, is accepting responsibility for some of these things. Many people will never accept that responsibility. Now, I'm not a big fan of saying I'm sorry all the time, but sometimes you do got to make a little bit of an apology. I mean, it doesn't really change anybody's attitude ever. And it's just.
But even if you're not apologizing, if you're just owning it and saying, "Hey, I did this.
Yeah.
I'll try to do better next time." There's a
People
big
call me an
difference
asshole
between-
when I say that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
There are things.
Yeah.
There are
Anyway,
others that were not so acceptable, but to me at the time it was like it was an eye for an eye. You're gonna do this to me, I'm gonna do it to you. But at the same time, now that we're older and we're getting along and we're co-parenting, I look back at it, and if that had not happened, we wouldn't be where we are to be able to co-parent the way we are right now.
no, you probably wouldn't.
No, we wouldn't. Does that make sense? And a few people know the situation that I have to deal with at least one of my kids' fathers, and he's trying to turn my daughter. He's adopted a David Koresh style like Jew thing, and I think he does it because I'm a heathen. But still, at the same effect, like it's very confusing to my daughter.
I'm sure it is. And that's another thing we got to start talking about with our deeds. And that's why I'm writing a book, is bringing that offspring in the home. That's going to be a continual tug of war between individuals and families that don't make it. You know, she needs to be raised Christian. You know, that's retarded. I think that's gay. There's a way to do that and a way not to do that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I was a kid, one of the biggest draws for me was listening to my father talk about the 9 noble virtues and talk about how our folk take responsibility and are required to take responsibility for all of our actions and everything that we do in life. And taking that responsibility, we take control of our lives. And that was really, even as a child, it really drew me in, you know what I mean? It was something that I found really important. I was really glad, and I thanked my father for it many times.
And that what you just said there is an important part of it, is just, I really thank my father for it sometimes. Sometimes it's very difficult to be able to thank our parents for the things that they did try to help us with. But the ability to employ gratitude, and once again, there's another one of them terms that's got so much baggage on it. But to be grateful for what good we did receive is important in our lives. And that's he was talking about his mouthful of song praise for Odin himself. I really think that if we employ that gratitude for those things, find 10 positive things, no matter what the situation is, you walk into it, find 5 positive things, find 10 positive things, find 20 positive things. Well, I'm glad I've got to sit in this chair. I'm glad I got something to drink. I'm glad there's a fan on me. I'm glad people showed up and gave enough of a shit about what I'm saying to pay attention. I'm glad that my little girl's in there and she's got a full tummy, because we had spaghetti and we had mini farfalle and fantastic sauce. And you know, there's a lot of things, and you start doing that, it's very difficult to maintain that mindset. A Lokian will always find the most negative thing to discuss, or they'll find some situation in the world. And the thing about a social justice warrior is there's no detail too trivial for them to get upset about.
Yeah.
And I might look at it and think, I could really give a shit. I don't care. You know, let them do what they want. But we live in a world that lends itself to the ease with which people might get bent out of shape over those things. And we can no longer afford to do that with everything that's riding on our shoulders. Because once we became Monster True, yeah, there was a lot of freedom and there was a lot of new stuff in the world. but there's also a real powerful obligation that goes with that to live up to measure up, to bear up under the load, to fucking be the kind of stand-up men we need to be, so that when other people look at us, they don't see a guy that's been a screw up all his life. And that's something that we really have to overcome. Being accountable for that kind of stuff is so vitally important to everything we're trying to achieve, because it's more than just our lives riding on it anymore.
Yep.
And I think we fail to recognize or grasp that point on a given daily basis. Having an that is one that is grateful for the opportunity to even live in a country that allows a freedom of religion, that allows us to talk about this stuff. There's something very special in that. And if you think about it for a second, it becomes even more special that we have a country that gives us freedom of religion to worship as we choose. And this is what we choose. So I feel
Hello.
Hail Odin, that's exactly right. All right, guys, I'm gonna get off here. I appreciate everybody's time tonight. Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
input and the feedback.
We appreciate you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Oh yeah, you know what I forgot to mention? The Donar Network. I don't know if you guys have seen my website, but there's a lady right there named Renee that has put together a dude, it'll blow your lips off.
You did a
She put it
fantastic
together
job, bro.
and she put the Patreon together. She's done an exceptional body of work. And if you guys need any kind of help with websites or anything like that, that is the lady to get a hold of. I
That
guarantee it.
website's sick.
Huh?
Thank
Really is.
you.
That website is sick, brother.
It's gonna get better too, man.
That's awesome.
I'm not
Really is.
done.
Visually,
All
it's
right, guys.
still it's
Don't forget to
wicked.
subscribe to Patreon.
Yes, and don't forget to subscribe to Patreon. Good night. Yeah, that's where all the important stuff's really gonna happen.
Stay safe, Kinsman.
Might even circulate a
Oh,
nude
yeah.
of myself. I mean, good night. What everybody expects. Y'all have a good night, man. Grab like, hey, tomorrow's Monday. Grab
Night.
it by the nose and whip its ass.
Good night.
Right on, brother.